From the arena to the front office, this is Scoreboard. I'm Chris Titley, and each episode brings you stories from the game of sport, where mindset, money, and meaning shape what comes next. Athletes, coaches, owners, and business leaders unpack the moments that matter, because the scoreboard isn't just about winning, it's about life beyond the game. Now let's get to this week's episode. Hi, it's Chris Titley here, and on today's episode of Scoreboard, the podcast, I'm joined by Tim MacKinnon, CEO of PlayHQ. Tim, how are you this morning?
Oh, I'm great. It's very cold in Sydney. It's a Melbourne morning here, and people are in a state of shock.
It's beautiful. I've got the jumper on here in Brizzy, but the sun is shining. We've actually had lots of rain, but hopefully this week there's forecast for sun shine through the weekend, which hopefully doesn't cancel a kids' sport. Now, speaking of kids' sport, Tim, you are the CEO of PlayHQ for the listeners out there. I'm curious to know what PlayHQ is.
Yeah, well, just as you mentioned, cancellation of kids' sport because of weather. One of the favourite features that we have, we're actually putting weather into the app so it has the forecast for the game.
Right.
Nice.
But
we automate the notification to all of the participants when a game gets washed out or cancelled. So the moment the administrator goes in and cancels it, everyone gets notified. So there's none of that WhatsApp. Is the game on? Is the game on? But
I think cricket's sorry, before we go, cricket's been the tough one because someone actually has to go out and like there's a bit of a WhatsApp group going around. Go, who's gone out to the pitch to have a look? Oh, is it wet? Is it not? You have to get the old Tony Gregg, get the keys out, put it in the pitch to see if the keys disappear or not.
We do more than just the weather report. We look at the system that runs all of community sport. So everything from the registration to the team allocation to the fixturing to live scoring, the app, so everyone knows where they've got to go with directions to the game. We do all the incident management, transfers between clubs, suspensions, concussion management, all the data and analytics around sport. So we're the platform that kind of underpins grassroots sport in Australia. And we've done over 8 million registrations. I think about 1 in 3 people playing organised sport in Australia use one of our applications, whether it's Play AFL, Play Cricket, My Hoops for basketball, or Netball HQ for netball.
Fantastic, Tim. And in terms of the numbers of participants, you get to see this. Which sports are sort of going up, down, neutral, etc.? What's popular, what's not?
Well, all sport is growing, which is the good news. So, and female participation has played a big part in that. And I think basketball and football or soccer is growing the fastest because of the female participation growth in those sports is the strongest. But overall, more people are playing sport, particularly post-COVID. We haven't quite, there was a dip in COVID and we're coming back to the levels it was pre-COVID. But we're seeing really healthy growth. The other big trend you're seeing is, obviously we do kids, but we do adult sport. And adult sport participation is increasing, and particularly like more casual formats, so like adult basketball, and that's the Ozplay data came out last week from the Australian Sports Commission, and it's actually picked up that trend really well, that there's this more casual formats like 3-on-3 basketball, pickup, social basketball, AFL nines, tape ball, all of these are really growing in this country.
Tim, when I was growing up, I played a bit of casual grade cricket, and you'd sort of rely on the newspaper the next day to see the results. You didn't really have a table. I was telling my son this the other day. You didn't really know who was on top of the table or where they were or who you're playing, really. You just kind of rocked up and played. The idea around PlayHQ and the digital age, how did that come about, I suppose? And then when did it come about? Because none of my, pre-2000s are kind of there, but, how did the idea come about? And then I suppose getting in with the associations to kind of capture, grassroots and adult participation and scores.
Yeah, so I joined as a CEO almost 2 years ago, but it was founded by a few guys, Sam Walsh, Ben Beath, Cade Whitnish, in 2019. And what they saw was a problem sports were coming to them. They both worked in kind of consulting and sports, and sports were coming to them and said, "Hey, we need a better system." Um, and there were existing systems in Australia at the time. Like technology goes through waves, so we're probably on. There was a first wave of technology that actually digitized some components, but then in 2019, the digital expectations had raised, and people really wanted a system that, for the governing body, they wanted something where they had really good data and understand who were playing, but also really engage the end participant. So PlayHQ was born out of a few pain points. I mean, one of them was obviously the governing bodies want a better system to understand what's going on, data, compliance. There's a lot of compliance, but the second part was the expectations of users around digital experience. And PlayHQ was born of really focusing on the end user, the player, the coach, the parent, and making it easy for them. Because the trend in a lot of software, often software, people build software for the people who are buying the software, right? And that happens in enterprise tech. People build systems for the CFO and procurement. They answer RFPs, they tick lots of boxes on features, but no one really thinks about the end user experience. And PlayHQ really focused on that end user experience and how to make it simple for parents and participants to play. That was one of the pain points. The other big pain point is for volunteers, that the burden of administration is huge, and how can you automate tasks for them? And things like scoring, live scoring, they're massive things, but they're critical for engaging people. We get about 1 billion impressions a year, and mainly from people checking their live scores. And that has lots of practical applications. One, you can see the team that you're playing and who the best players are and their form and everything like that, and then kids can see after the game, they can see themselves actually I don't know about your kids, but mine, unless something's happened digitally, it doesn't exist in their mind. They want to watch playback a video of everything. But also, this is really practical for parents. I was chatting to someone recently who was saying, "Oh, I love PlayHQ because I love to watch my son play, but I don't want to sit and watch the whole game. But I can track it on PlayHQ, and he's batting number 7, and see when he's coming in and drive down there and watch him bat." So today it's data, it's scoring, it's live stats, but tomorrow it'll be about video. I talked about my kids. My kids, if I'm really specific, they have to video something for it to actually exist and watch themselves on video. And so we see that we integrate with video players in cricket and basketball, and we produce because we're live scoring the game, we can capture the moments in time where a scoring event happened. In cricket, there's something happening every ball. Every ball is recorded, but in basketball, when someone scores, that's time stamped, and then we can create that with a partner, create the highlights and provide that to every player so they can see all the 3-pointers they scored in a game. And that trend is going to, in a decade, that will be a normal part of your experience, is that everything will be available on video.
I'm curious, is that a volunteer doing that, or do you have protocols and things like that in terms
the
of
scoring?
literally, the videoing. Is it literally someone holding a phone up, or is it?
A great question. So the scoring is volunteers,
Yes.
but and they use our devices and our system. The video is there's 2 kinds of technology here. The ones that we partner with is actually a fixed camera, right? So at basketball venues, they've installed a camera, and the quality of these cameras is improving, and so they track. Some of the emerging ones globally track the player with AI. They track the ball, and they're always following the ball. They come in close. They also then track not just, we obviously get scoring, but they track all the other things like rebounds, assists, because they see all of it, and they use AI to analyze that. They see the player number and associate it with the player. So they're fixed cameras, but then there's others that people There's portable cameras that they volunteer, like a manager will bring up and put on the side. That's quite common in football, soccer. And then there's also solutions where people can just use their iPhone and just and watch the game, and then it'll sort of slice it up afterwards.
We've seen a bit of a trend every year. Everyone gets their Spotify unwrapped. Do you reckon that's going to happen? With kids eventually, like your player profile unwrapped.
Absolutely,
Girls, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that. They're the kinds of things that and for the club, just being able to produce their kind of, they spend a lot of time on the annual yearbook with all like the stats, leaderboards, all of that. You think in the future that'll all be automated and created for them.
Do you stop and think how much of a chain effect that the software has every now and then, and sort of half pinch yourself? I'm sure there's yearbooks. I'm sure there's scouts. There's managers. There's under 15 representative teams. The people look at the data and stats that you guys have provided to them, and that can alter and change the course of a direction of one person's life pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean it's wild. Every weekend we're at the moment 35,000 games going on in the system. Yeah, but I don't really think about like all those micro moments of like someone's scoring, because I think that'll watch that. What the mission of the business is to unleash the life changing impact of community sport by growing participation and engagement. And I think I pinch myself when I think, oh, we played a small role in getting more people to play and more kids to play. So I just got to give a really dumb example of that. Like, we just finished our peak AFL netball basketball registration season, and the team worked on making sure that registration experience is really smooth and fast. Right? And I worked at eBay and e-commerce, and that's basic in other areas. Like, the faster you get people through to check out, the more product you sell. But in sport, everyone sort of assumes, like anyone who starts a registration is going to finish a registration. But it's not actually true. Like the dropout rates are really high because you've got parents, everyone's got competition on time. If it's too complex, they just don't finish it. And then their kids saying, oh, did you register me for this? And you're like, oh, sorry, we missed the cutoff, whatever. That happens. So we grew that 4.5% through just from our conversion optimization year on year. And the year before it was 3%. Now that, on 2.5 million registrations, 4.5%, do the quick maths. But I think that's an extra, what is that?
10,000, no?
100, no, 100 and, 140,000.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, 140,000 people, right? Like, who wouldn't have otherwise played. And then we add things like refer a friend in registration. So people are like pulling their friends in, because we know, particularly for girls, that having a mate that plays really matters. So all of these things add up, and if year in, year out we're able to bring in more people, that's what has meaning. And because community sport is, as you know better than anyone, it's not just about the sport; it's about communities. Like, the sporting team is the lifeblood of a rural town. It's about business. I think that the sporting analogies are overused in business, but you'd appreciate them more than anyone. But really, everything you learn about being in a team, about critical moments, everything you learn in life actually comes from you playing sport as a kid. And so, I'm passionate about growing businesses. I'm passionate about growing communities, and ultimately, you play a small part in getting more people exposed to teams, and then keeping them playing. Like, we've got some amazing data analysts in our team, Ryan and Cooper, and they built a churn prediction model. So we take all the data we collect, the scoring moments, the attendance, the training, the game attendance, and every data point we have demographic data, and we can predict the first model with 80% accuracy, how likely is that a kid is going to come back next year and play. And there's all sorts of things that we don't collect that impact that, but we run the model again you're really interesting. Like when you ran it in different sports, like we did it in AFL first, but when we ran the data across netball, basketball, cricket, we actually improved our accuracy with AFL because our database is set up so we can see the relationships between people in different sports and between data points. And so we're now able to give to the club uh, a list of all the players that we think are going to churn next year, so they can engage them and check in on them and see, hey, what's going on for you? Are you going to come back? Have a conversation. The coach have a conversation with them, and hopefully they'll just keep more kids playing.
Tim, I'm interested to know, and you don't have to give it away in terms of what inputs are in that. I mean, is it would you chuck in sort of winning, losing? Is that something which you think that
It's
kids are
it, so
affected
it's
by?
a it's yeah it's we just let it loose on all of our data, right? It's everything. So I can't actually even tell you. I probably could look it up as like, hey, what were the key, us a team, what were the key causal things? Which data point impacted the accuracy of the P score the most? But it's everything. And we just need to collect more data. So, like for example, soon we're adding in scoring, capturing the interchange moments, so we can see game time of kids because we know that's a critical driver. Like if a kid's, and I mean, I experienced this, and unfortunately, my kids. I'm not great at sport. Like I've always played in the bottom team, and I was constantly being benched as a kid. I just spent more time on the bench, and you notice it. Um, I'm not sure if it's data we want to give all the parents because they'll be arguing over seconds and minutes their kids are getting, but those things really matter. I mean, you were just talking before we started about parental behaviour, and the impact that can have. Well, we record incidents, and um, we'll be able to record incidents that happen in games. Plus, when you add in video, like people's behaviour will improve because they know they're being taped. We've heard that from sports, but also you'll be able to capture all this other data from video, and the model will get better and better and better and better, and understand the kind of things that will drive.
Yeah, we're having a chat, loosely about parental behaviour and all the right way to act as a parent on the sidelines, the encouragement you give to your children and other children, and the language and the behaviour, the body language, etc., etc. On the volunteer side, which is the officiating, the refereeing and whatnot, what are you seeing there? You're seeing a bit of a shortage, or is anything you can see in terms of like officiating, or the volunteers are dropping off, or about the same every year?
Oh, look, we see there's a few things. One, there's sport is growing and volunteer growth has to keep with it. Like there's and it's tracking behind, right? Like so there's a shortage of volunteers. Australia has an incredible culture around volunteering for sport. And the whole ecosystem depends on people volunteering. But there's a shortage of volunteers. There's a shortage of referees. So we see that volunteers churn, like 30% of them don't come back next year. And a lot of that is circumstantial. You volunteer while your kid's playing, and then they move out, they stop playing, and you don't volunteer. But on the referee side, we partner with referee management solutions. So RefBook and Ref Assist. And so what they do is they manage all the referee side, the payments, the identification of referees. But yeah, look, overall that is a problem that they need help with. And our role is, how do we automate tasks and make it easier for everyone to participate? In the same way, like if you think about for referees, the Uber made it really easy for people to become a driver. Like referee technology needs to make it so simple that anyone can go and referee a game or do that and get accredited. And for volunteers, I mean, we don't play a role in like attracting volunteers, but what we can do is help to retain them, make the experience better. For the team manager, it's a painful task of chasing people on various things. If we can automate a lot of that for them, then people hopefully have more time to manage or be a coach. I mean, obviously, everyone talks about AI at the moment. you know, and they worry about AI taking their job. Uh, the only people that don't worry about AI taking their job is a volunteer at a sporting club. And if you think about how you can have an agent or an assistant for every volunteer that helps them do their job better, like we've started some of that. We have, we're testing some prototypes, but at the moment we use AI for like advanced fixturing, because it's really complex algorithm to figure out how do you optimize all of these different requests from clubs. So they want to have all their home games here on this weekend. They can't play, their ovals being refurbed or the clubhouse being refurbed. They can't play this date. They want the under nines and under eights to play together all the time. Before, like, people were getting literally, administrators were in a whiteboard for 3 weeks trying to figure out the fixtures, and you can use AI to solve those problems. But and then we also have AI for like our analytics. You can ask, hey, type into PlayHQ, give me show me female versus male participation by region for the last 5 years, and it will generate a report or a graph or whatever showing that. But we're really bullish on how can you automate a lot of the tasks so that volunteers have more time to coach, to engage the players, to enjoy the game rather than this job of administration.
Yeah, no, my wife's a team manager of I think cricket and footy, and one of the things she said the other day was the jersey numbers get switched around all the time, and whatever putting it in is a little bit tricky. And just on that, I suppose the feedback you get from users going, actually, can you automate this or can you do this? How does that work? Does it generally go to the club that goes to the association that goes to you, or do you get direct feedback saying, hang on a second, we've had 15,000 people request this. What next?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris, and one that like we deal with real time. So we do. There is stuff that filters up through the club, to the governing body, and they share, areas of pain points. But we try to talk to and connect with and get feedback from the end user. So everybody using PlayHQ as an administrator, gets a net promoter score question on likelihood to recommend and what we could do better. So we collect a lot there, and we call back people who are detractors and ask them what we can do better. So our product team is constantly doing discovery and talking to end users to identify things, and we break them into sort of thematics. So at the moment we are working on like how do you make the game day management easier for the manager in the app. Like at the moment, the app is more of a player participant, but what can we do to help all of those, and things like, lineups, allocations, jersey numbers, all of that. So we're very focused on the end user. Like ultimately, if we're building great product for people like your wife, then everything works. And the governing body, because their job, they're stakeholders for the community. And yeah, they have their own needs. But if their community's happy, if they don't hear about the software, in their mind, and that's really good. So if you make the people at the bottom who are on the pitch or the ground happy, then everything works.
Yeah, and from that, I suppose, do you get the, like, I'd say, quote unquote, disputes of like, oh, this you've incorrectly done it and all this sort of stuff. How do you go with that every weekend with so many data points?
Yeah, we've we look at the end we're the system of record. We don't kind of get involved in, but there have been some scenarios. I can think of one, in cricket recently, which I think we did the Duckworth-Lewis calculation, and it was actually ended up being disputed,
Yep.
and it was in the papers. I think it was in Wagga, in the papers, and it was a final, and so they actually went to the tribunal, and the way that someone had entered the scores, they actually had made a mistake, and PlayHQ was correct. So we have, but we don't get involved in those, and obviously, we enable the governing bodies and the state governing bodies and the associations and the leagues, and give them the data they need to be able to make the decisions they have to make.
When it comes to the data, though, there must be some interesting things. I remember a couple of years ago there was a fast bowler at the Gold Coast that got 6 wickets in 6 balls in the last over of the game. Every week you might get someone picking up a triple century or a 5 for 1 or even in footy kicking
Yeah,
15 goals. How do you kind of, from a social point of view, can you amplify that a little bit and give someone a little bit
yeah,
of airtime?
we could do more of that. Where we had like the team find them and they share them. There's like a footy game where I think one team got like 500 points and the other team got 10 or something like that. It was just basically kicking practice. We highlight some of the games. We had a good one recently. Like Josh Giddey played in one of the Melbourne basketball games and highlighted that. There is so many stories behind every stat.
Tim, that 500 to 1, the algorithm of drop-off rates of people playing the participation, that team that got the 1 against it, do you reckon there'll be a high chance of dropping off, not wanting to play next year? They might have been incorrectly graded potentially.
Yeah. Well, grading's a big thing, right? Like it's critical, and some of the associations are unbelievable at grading. Like you can see each year, like the differential between first and last. But again, that's a data problem. We provide them the grading reports. Every sport does it differently, but we'd like to get to a place where actually we use AI and tell them this is the grading, and of course they want to review it and make sure. But we can take all the data points of all the players and tell them this is how we think this team's going to perform. But as predicting performance is if it was 100% predictable, then there wouldn't be a betting market. Then
There wouldn't be a betting
much
market.
fun.
Yeah, that's right. We're living in mid 2025. The election just happened with a big topic around cost of living. Cost of sport is expensive for parents when their children play multiple sports. I've talked a lot about specialization with a lot of athletes and a lot of business leaders around the pros and cons of specializing early in one sport, and a lot of advice has come through not to play as many as possible. But with that comes opening the wallet, the pair of shoes, the jerseys, etc., the growth rates of the kids to go from here to here over the summer. I'm curious around payments for you and money and the sport. How are you participating in that? How are you collecting payments? Some high level numbers of what you do, and I suppose if you think it's an issue in terms of expensive, participation in sport, and also the peripheral things like Rebel Sport might go, hey, let's do a deal with you guys to make it easier for parents.
Yeah, so I think on the first point, the cost of sport is going up. It is going up higher than inflation, and part of that is because of the product is getting better. Like people are getting more professional coaches, more kit, better clubhouses, better ovals, better facilities. So better training, and but it is an issue. Some sports reinvest a lot into making sure they keep the cost down, and put their broadcast dollars back into grassroots because they realise that getting more kids playing ultimately is what's going to drive the performance and fandom of the game. It varies by sport, it varies by state. But I think at the end I think it's still a great, people pay it because it's worth it, right? Like, and you compare the cost of other things that you can do with your kids and the outcomes they get from that. People do it because it's a worthwhile investment and it brings their kids joy, and it's an investment in them, and it brings the families joy. So whilst it is going up, I think it's still an incredible value to for the life lessons you get out of playing sport. And I agree that playing as much sport as you can and as many different teams as you can. And I know it's hard for parents, but I'm grateful that my parents let me play a lot of sport. I wasn't very good at it, and I didn't give them much of a return when they watched, but today I look back and it was really formative in my life. On the payments
Yep.
question, we one of the pain points is payments. Like payments used to be done manually, whether it's cash or bank transfer, and if you're a club, like chasing money from players was one of the big pain points, right? And I remember when I used to play, the club president would come down at like halfway through the season and go, boys, everyone's got to pay their subs. The club can't exist without that. Well, and then there's all these different payments. So the national body might have a fee, state body has a fee, the association has a fee, then the club have their fees. And so I think one of the problems we solve is we automate a lot of that and make it easier for everyone to collect their payments. And they do it up front. So we do one registration and we collect all the different fees. We split them and pay everybody up and down the tree that needs to get paid. We have the merchandise you can buy there while you check out. We actually have a product called Easy Merch where a club doesn't even need to go and buy its own kit and merchandise anymore and have it sitting in the storeroom and trying to sell it. We have a third party that will manufacture custom kit. So we've got the club logo and we'll put it on the jumper, and soon we'll have the name and the number on the water bottle. And so you can, as you go through checkout, buy like customized kit for your club. And that's for smaller clubs that it makes it much easier for them. And then, the opportunity around all of the payments, like and as you say, like to make it easy for parents, you want to pay everything and the clubs want to get everyone paid up front and know who's playing. But then if you could actually add in while you're purchasing, the uniform, the socks, the mouth guard, the boots, and just do it all in one hit, because I don't know about you, but like otherwise, like the morning of the first game, like, oh God, you've grown out of your boots. Where's your mouth guard?
Yeah, we had the
So
problem the
all of
other day
that
with
can
the
be
old
simplified.
the shin pads,
Yeah,
the soccer. We're like, oh yeah, that's right, shin pads mandatory. We haven't had them for a while in our household. Off we go, trot along to Rebel Sport. If you're listening, Rebel Sport, you can sponsor this podcast, by the way. But shin pads and then the old footy boots hand me down from the brothers was like, oh, it's a bit too tight. And you're like, oh, you have a feel. You're like, yes, they're very tight, uncomfortable. You have grown. Time for a new pair of boots.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
endless. Tim, now being a sports tragic, I mean, you're not coming from a professional sports background, but you're running a business that's embedded in sports. Where's you mentioned your parents have, helped you and paid for you to play sport. Has it always been an interest in sport? Have you always loved sport from the background, even though you may not have worked in the sector?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I love and that was part of I grew up playing sport. At 8 years old, I thought I'd play cricket for Australia, like every 8-year-old. I think the closest I got, I went to school with Dennis Lilly's son. That was the closest I got to playing cricket
Yep.
for Australia. But
Speaking of sports, with the PlayHQ, you can go back now and look at the players that have made the big time, quote unquote, and you can go back and look at their inningses and their games. I think it's
that's
quite
right.
actually quite fun. Recently with Sam Constance, you're going, oh, where did he play? And you go, oh, he was actually New South Wales second 11 12 months before he's playing for Australia in the Boxing Day Test match. And Josh Brown came on the podcast, and I quizzed him about his highest score in fifth grade for Sandgate, and he kind of knew it. So it was kind of fun to do that now.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Tim, sorry, you continue.
No, I was just saying, I grew up playing sport. I was pretty short, and so I played the lowest levels. I was always in the last to be picked in the lowest teams, but I played right up to. I played footy. I played in D grade with this great team called the Dingoes. It was just such a fun year. We went through undefeated, but lost in the grand final. But we had such fun. Like the D grade are the biggest characters, the best people. They don't take their sport too seriously, and I know that those people, that I played with, if I rang any of them, haven't seen most of them for years, but if I rang any of them up and asked for a favour, they'd do it for me. And I think that's why community sport really matters. That and so I worked in technology most of my career, and then I've got three kids and they're playing, and Sam Walsh, one of the founders, he, I've known him for a long time, and he'd reached out and see whether I wanted to join. I did some consulting, and part of it was my personal experience. I wanted my kids to play sport in the same way. I didn't have that connection, and the one of the biggest barriers for them was, like, I'd been through all of the different sporting software, and it's pretty bad. Like, it feels like you're going back into the 90s with some of them. And I also just saw the biggest thing for them, the biggest competition was TikTok and Roblox. That's the competition of sport. And I had conversation with Sam about it, and the sort of vision that they have is like, what if you could make the technology around sport as addictive as TikTok? Like, what if people connected with it and were able to look at and think about their sport, their PlayHQ experience, and not just stats, but everything, be able to watch video? How many more kids could you keep playing if they had that digital experience that went alongside the physical experience? So that's the vision, and about how we can really change the relationship that kids and adults have to sport, make it easier for them, but just more engaging.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point about the social media and gaming. I mean, this when we were growing up, none of that, right? So your competition was probably your parents not being able to afford it, or accessibility of actual competitions and leagues. And Ali Brigginshaw spoke about being 12 years old as a girl and not being able to play rugby league because there's no competition and whatnot like that. But now you've got gaming, you've got this huge market, you've got social media and all these things. You really think that's the competition now?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's a competition for all of us. It's like, where do we spend our time in a day? Like, getting out, go for a run. Like, your competition is, scrolling through your phone, right? Like, and it's real for kids and
And
um
adults.
and yeah, and adults. It's there for everyone. So it's it's and I'm not having any issue with all of that, and social media is part of it. The experience of connecting with people, but my point is that sport is actually doesn't have a level playing field with all of these. Like, I worked in big consumer tech companies. I worked at eBay for a decade, and I know the tools that they had to engage people, to keep them coming back. We talked about just basics like registration flows, but all of the marketing tools, the data they had, their ability to engage users, keep them engaged. Sport has none of that. Like, they're competing for people's attention with that arm behind their back, tied behind their back, because they don't have that. And so, if you can just level the playing field and give sport like the same technology stack, the same data, the same engagement tools, then it can actually compete against those other things, in a fair way.
And Tim, PlayHQ is in. You mentioned it was in netball. You mentioned it was in cricket and AFL. Australian sort of centric based business. But I'm curious to know what, potentially you're thinking a little bit bigger and maybe thinking on a global scale.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do cricket and hockey in New Zealand as well, but we've just launched Basketball England, um, and yeah, the opportunity in Europe, in North America, is massive. There's 2 billion people playing community or grassroots sports in the world, and our mission to unleash that life-changing impact of community sport really can only be achieved by going global. And it's been really interesting to see as we're rolling out Basketball England. We sent a great one of our team members, Danny, who's from Shepparton. She's living in Manchester and going around and training all of the basketball associations and the leagues there, and how, like, the technology that we've developed in Australia through the feedback of hundreds of thousands of volunteers and administrators, how it is transformative. Like, Australia is way ahead in sports technology and in the way we run community sports. I was talking to someone in France in sports recently, and they were like, they still couldn't believe that Australia beat France in the medal tally. They're like, how does a nation so small? And it's because of our grassroots sport, and we're lucky enough that we've been built, based on the demands of a very demanding set of the community here. People take their sport seriously, but the opportunity when you take that to new countries, it can be completely transformative. So I think Australia has a competitive advantage in sports tech. We have great sports tech companies, and our next phase is PlayHQ becoming a global sports company.
That's a really interesting way of looking about it. Tim, a couple of questions I asked my guests. One is, as a sports tragic, what's your all-time favourite sporting moment?
It would have to, like, one that really, I was thinking back when Robert De Castella won 1982 marathon in Brisbane. I just remember as a kid
Games,
watching, Commonwealth Games, and watching him. I ran one marathon when I was 30, and actually met Deeks and had a photo with him beforehand, and then I saw him speak last year, and he told a funny story about that. He actually had diarrhea during the run, and he was wiping his legs the whole time. He got a wet towel and he was wiping his legs throughout the run, for obvious reasons. And after that, people thought that was actually a performance hack, and so people used to take a wet towel and rub their legs while they were running.
Right. The key to success is what Deeka does: get the towel and rub it. Yeah, I mean, was it Steve Orr used to have a little red rag that he put on his face, and people used to say, if I have a red rag, I'm going to get 100. Right? Yeah. Excellent. The other question I ask is around the scoreboard moment, which is a moment in your life which is pretty vivid. It's like a photo, and you're like, I remember that moment. If someone recalled it, you're like, it feels like yesterday, but also from that moment on, something may have changed in your life.
Yeah, I was listening to Pat Howard on the podcast recently, just talking about the particular people that have had an impact on you, and I guess I can go back to childhood and teachers and conversation with parents, but actually one in the last 15 years, I was working at eBay, and we had a new leader come in to run eBay Australia. He had run eBay in Korea for 15 years. And Korea is incredibly competitive e-commerce market, and his name was Juman Park, and he came and he was in Australia for about 2 months, and he met with all the teams, and I had a couple of meetings with him, and I was like a mid-level employee. I wasn't sitting on the leadership team, and he pulled me into his office and he said, Tim, I'm going to be here for 3 or 4 years running Australia, and you're going to be my successor. And it was completely out of the blue. And he said, I'm going to train you. I'm going to put you in different roles in marketing, sales, and you're not going to move up because you're going to be moving sideways, and you might get a bit frustrated by that. But trust me. And he true to his word. I succeeded him a few years later, and I was just so lucky that I had someone who backed me and put me in and trained me to in all that facets I needed to be to run a company, and identified that. And I think sometimes you need someone from the outside to just affirm things. I mean, I grew up, as I said, playing sport. Because I was not great at it, I never saw myself as a leader. My archetype of a leader was the person who led the sporting team and was the best player. And it's only later in life that you figure out that's not the case. But sometimes you still need someone to say to you, hey, you're a leader and you're the right person. So I think
that's an excellent scoreboard moment, and someone that shows confidence in your ability. And then obviously from that point of view, you're going, oh, am I? But that you've morphed into that role. That's a really good moment. Tim, I've got one final little quiz game that we play. It's called the Scoreboard Scramble, and it's based on our previous guest. And our previous guest was Tom Boyd, the Western Bulldogs AFL player that won a premiership in 2016. So the word I'm going to have to get you to spell backwards, and you've got 20 seconds to do it. It's actually 2 words. And the two words are Western Bulldogs. Tim, your time starts now.
SGODLLUB
Nailed it. Hey, SGODLLUBNRETSEW. Finishing on a high note, Tim MacKinnon, CEO of PlayHQ. Thank you so much for coming on Scoreboard and sharing the story of PlayHQ and a story about yourself as well and how you've morphed into the role, the importance of PlayHQ at a grassroots level, the digital infrastructure you guys have built and are building through the different sports. I wish you well. I look forward to following the progress of the different functions and the videos and all these different features that you come on from referees, etc. as well. And looking forward to catching up.
Thanks, Chris.